Welcome back with another banger. It's the React Files. Hope you having a good night. Let's get straight to it.
I dare you to try to explain the 100-ton granite boxes at the Serapeum of Saqqara in Egypt. There's 24 of these massive granite enclosures, and you won't believe the official explanation for them. All 24 of them were moved into this underground complex dating to about 1400 BC, where they now sit. And the craftsmanship of these boxes is once again insane. Perfect right angles and parallel sides leveled with machine-like precision, you know the drill. Made of granite, which reminder is harder than steel, using bronze and stone tools that are softer than granite. Like, you know, using a plastic knife to cut through a car door. Try that out and let me know how it goes. But never mind that. I've already said it 100 times about all these other artifacts and ancient architecture throughout ancient Egypt, because these boxes, they're different. Let's start with the sheer size, about 100 tons each, and barely even fit through the hallways they would need to pass through to be placed in the pits that they currently sit in. As we can see from this unfinished box here that was abandoned in one of the passageways at the Serapeum. If you couldn't tell, they're also made from a single piece of granite each, so it's not like they took smaller pieces and just glued them together. One big ass brick of granite, hollowed out from the inside into a perfect box, absolutely zero room for any mistakes. And I find it extremely difficult to imagine how, once again, this sawing method could hollow out a granite box like this with flawless accuracy, because 100 tons is a lot. The experts claim that we might be able to move 100-ton objects using primitive methods as long as we had enough people, which according to them is about 400. Tell me, how on earth would 400 people be able to coordinate moving 100-ton blocks in cramped hallways like these and around these super tight corners? For reference, this is what 400 people looks like. All stuffed in there. Not to mention, the boxes were perfectly placed in the center of rooms even smaller than the hallways. Where do we have room for 400 people there? And I don't know if you noticed, but these hallways and pits are currently lit up with modern lighting, which the ancient Egyptians obviously didn't have. This Serapeum would have been pitch black day and night 3,400 years ago, but of course they still had fire and torches that served this exact purpose, right? Except they found no evidence of soot, the leftover scorches from torch fire, anywhere on the walls or ceilings in this complex, as they would normally find in dark underground passageways. Any commonsensical person would imagine that a project like this would have taken thousands of hours of work in torch-lit chambers, yet not a shred of proof of that anywhere. So what did they use to see in the dark back then? And the entire Saqqara necropolis itself is dug into limestone bedrock. There's no granite found here, so they couldn't have chiseled these in place either, as some may suggest. What we do know is that these boxes were important, like super duper important. But for what? Clearly an undertaking of this scale would have surely held a higher purpose for their civilization. I mean, they definitely weren't tombs. They're obviously way too big, right? Nope, they still call them tombs. Made for, get this, the pharaoh's prized bulls. Yes, bull tombs. They said it, so it must be real. Now, upon discovery in 1850, most of these boxes were already open. Their lids either gone or moved over, so whatever was inside had likely already been stolen. You know, by those pesky thieves that conveniently steal everything that historians have no evidence of. But they found one box that was completely sealed, lid fully intact, so the bull skeleton must still be inside. A perfect opportunity to prove this theory. Well, firstly, they couldn't lift the lid, which is only about 30 tons, as they weren't able to get enough manpower in the room to even budget. Yet the Egyptians somehow moved the entire 100-ton blocks themselves into those rooms thousands of years earlier. Makes sense. So they did the only logical thing that anyone from the 1800s would do in such a scenario. Blow it the up with TNT. Yeah, for real. Archaeology was pretty savage back then, which finally revealed the truth that the boxes at the Serapeum of Saqqara were filled with nothing. Absolutely nothing. No mummy, no bull skeletons, no gold or treasure, nada. They did find mummified bull carcasses in a bunch of wooden sarcophagi, as would be expected, in an area called the Lesser Gallery, but not a single one found in any of the granite boxes. Cause yes, to be fair, the Apis bull was a highly revered deity worshipped by the ancient Egyptians, symbolizing fertility in agriculture and the physical embodiment of their god Ptah. Hope I pronounced that right. I just find it hard to believe that a project of this colossal magnitude, which would have taken years, if not decades to complete, was dedicated to stashing the bodies of dead animals. While at the same time, mummified bulls were found in much smaller, simpler wooden sarcophagi in the Lesser Gallery, which is oddly closed to the public and no images of those exist either. Allegedly proving that this is how they stored bull remains, not this. But then again, I'm just an idiot. Still others claim these boxes may have been power conductors that generated electricity for their civilization, part of the infamous Giza power plant theory, which is a fringe idea that may or may not be true, and I explained it in full in a previous video. So, are these really bull tombs, or just a steaming load of bullshit?
I say it's a hot steaming pile of bullsh. Shout out to Phil's Pixel. This was a great one. Yeah, I call BS. They had to blow it open with dynamite. Who opened it up before them?
Look at these gigantic swords that would have to be used by something that's like a few hundred feet tall. An account called Unchained Actual sent me this video showing these gigantic swords. Now, I looked around trying to find any news articles of these findings and couldn't find them anywhere. But we do know the Smithsonian seems to swoop in and kind of cover things up. But this sword is public, and look at the size of this thing. It's got to be like 7 feet long, and it's made from the snout of a sea creature. Also, this sword was recently found in Japan, and it's 7 feet 9 inches long. This can be found as public record as well. And there are way more records of giant swords that are found and even on display in museums. Now, what about these? If these were real, do you think that they would make it public record? Do you think this is a leak? Or could it be just really good animation and AI? Let me know in the comments. Oh, and then of course there's the other angle that these were just art pieces that were made. But in that case, why hide it? Why cover it up? You know, just display it as an art piece. But that really, really big sword, I mean, I don't even want to know the size of the creature that would have to hold that thing.
Shout out to 7 Club. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Those are swords of titans. I wouldn't want to hear it either. You would need a real big museum for something like that.
Honestly, what the hell is going on in France right now? Because just hours before the opening ceremony for the Olympic Games, there has just been a massive coordinated attack on multiple high-speed rail lines. And keep in mind, this is on a day where there's expected to be around 600,000 people in attendance. Authorities say that these arson attacks were deliberately to sabotage the Olympics because they say that the train lines were attacked in the west, north, and east, and they even tried to complete the full circle around Paris, but the attack in the lines on the south was stopped by police. Now, as you'd expect hearing this has caused major disruption, and the head of the transportation company said that a staggering 800,000 travelers will be affected because of this. This is actually on top of now we're just finding out that the Argentina football team got robbed at their training camp and they stole some of the players' watches and rings amongst other things. And on top of the whole list of things I spoke about in yesterday's video. So I don't know if this is just like a France thing specific to France or just a state of the world thing. But honestly, it's just sad to see right now.
This is completely senseless. Shout outs to Dylan Page. 800,000 people affected. That's a lot of people. Top of tourism and the athletes from all over the world. Paris is looking like the new Gotham.
After years of planning and a full century after the French capital last hosted the Games, final preparations are underway for today's opening ceremony of the Summer Olympics in Paris. But this morning, the French railway system is facing major disruption after what appears to be a coordinated vandalism on several high-speed lines into the capital. The rail company SNCF said it included arson attacks and was an attempt to paralyse the network. Eurostar, which operates trains from London to Paris, called it a coordinated act of malice. It comes amid tight security as organisers prepare for tonight's ceremony, which will see athletes carried on boats along the River Seine through the heart of the city in front of 300,000 spectators.
The Olympics hasn't even officially begun yet, but the chaos has. Australia's gold medal BMX athlete was robbed last night. Luckily, the team's bikes weren't in the van at the time, but they later found a bunch of their equipment like their bags, helmets, tools, and massage table discarded near a park bench, and they even ate their chocolate.
They ate your chockies!
Then, on Wednesday, 3 members of Australia's Olympic broadcast team were walking back from the studio when they were attacked and robbed by a group of men. A couple days before that, police arrested a Russian chef on suspicion of plotting with a foreign power to stage large-scale acts of destabilization during the Olympic Games. 2 members of staff on Canada's women's football team were sent home after allegedly flying a drone over New Zealand's training session. And then, to top it all off, just last night, literal riot Olympic police had to enter the match against Argentina and Morocco, because not only did the ref give 15 minutes of added time when Argentina was 2-1 down, but they managed to equalize in the 16th minute. Fans started throwing bottles, flares, running onto the pitch, and it even got to the point where the entire crowd had to be told to leave the stadium. After an hour and a half of waiting around, the players were brought back onto the pitch to play the last 3 minutes of the game. And then, in a final twist to a match that lasted over 4 hours, Argentina's goal was disallowed, so Morocco actually won in the end. This Olympics about to be wild.
It's sad that those athletes got robbed after leaving the studio. Might have to keep a close eye on this one.
You mentioned in one of your last talks that petroleum wasn't what we thought it was, that it wasn't a fossil fuel, that it didn't come from fossil animals.
Yeah.
Is it just a mineral? Is it a mineral like any other mineral? Is that how it, what would you say? What's the origin of
You see,
petroleum?
when they first found petroleum, because they were beginning to make motors and needed on axles of wheels on railroad trains and all that sort of thing, and remember, trains started in the beginning of the 19th century, then oil went from just a lubricant to a fuel, and it made it valuable. And Rockefeller happened to be the smartest man in the business at the time, but he made most of his money, or much of it, off the transport of the petroleum as well as selling it. But one thing they realized was, because oil is putting a price on oil is like putting a price on a pail of water. No initial cost. It's in the ground, and in those days they were, some of it almost what you'd call surface mining the oil. They didn't go down deep. So in order to get the price up, they hit on the idea that they would have to make it appear to be scarce. After we take the next few barrels out, we're probably going to have to close as well. That kind of thing. Well, a very fortuitous event. In 1892, there was a convention in Geneva of scientists to determine what organic substances are. Well, the definition of organic is a substance with hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. And so it's usually a living substance, a tree. You analyze a dead tree, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, and grass, and so on, living things. Animals, we are hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. So at this Geneva Convention, Rockefeller took advantage of sending some scientists over who said, petroleum is hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. Therefore, it must be derived from the spoiling, the rotting of formerly living matter. And playing the game properly, when this scientific convention was over, they defined oil as the residue from formerly living matter. Well, that makes it a fossil fuel. I don't know why they decided to use the word fossil, but it says formerly living matter is fossil. Well, of course, today, and another thing we should know is that there has never been a fossil, a real fossil found below 16,000 feet. And you can't argue at 16,000 as a level line because someplace the ground sinks and so on. But 16 is what the scientists say, 16,000. We mine oil, or we drill for oil at 30,000, 33,000, 28,000 every day of the week. So right there, we rule it out that it isn't fossil fuel. It's called fossil fuel for the minds of the public to feel that it is an asset that is running out, being depleted. We talk about depletion allowance, which is a lot of, and actually, if you know the world's oil supply, you know that it is not going to run out for an awfully long time. It is the second most prevalent liquid on Earth. And we haven't begun to... Well, with all that background, you see, the people in charge of the petroleum business, for perfectly reasonable business things, like any other man in the business, wants to keep his price as high as he can get away with. And the way to do is just say, well, there's no more. The last barrel is going to cost $1,000, and then it's all done. And they preach that stuff. What bothers me is that in geology books, it's in there. The geologists say it's a fossil fuel. They've been bought. I mean, I went to a 4-year federal staff energy seminar run by the government of the United States during the so-called energy crisis. I was the participant that represented the railroad industry. The airline industry was there. Every AA, administrative assistant of senators and congressmen, was there. The CIA was there. The Defense Department was there. The State Department was there. Sometimes sitting right in front of me in the row would be Henry Kissinger with his friend, the head of Department of Defense. That's too bad. I can't put the names with them. But anyway, people like that, top men in the government, sitting there listening to the federal staff energy seminar. Well, what this was doing is for 4 years, they were teaching a propaganda line to the leading people in this country, and therefore to the leading people in the world, when you include the Schlesingers, Kissinger and Schlesinger, among others. And the object of it was, as Kissinger used in his own terms when it was time for him to speak, to create a world price for oil. In other words, not 30 cents a gallon here and 90 cents a gallon there, but let's get a world price. That's their goal, and they're trying to do that for wheat and everything else. We don't realize what the controls are, whether it's oil or some of these other things. Almost everything today is being categorized at the highest price they can possibly make it go. And so calling petroleum a fossil fuel is the basis for this system with respect to petroleum. And I don't know if the name Arthur Kantrowitz rings any bell. Arthur Kantrowitz is the head of the Kantrowitz Labs set up by the Avco company near Boston, scientific laboratories, and a great man in the scientific world. And Kantrowitz and I were sitting at a table at this seminar once, and the table happened to be all young college grad, PhD geologists. And so just to get a conversation started, I turned to Kantrowitz and I said, Arthur, what do you think about this foolishness of these speakers talking about fossil fuel? And it was kind of put up. He started laughing. He said, that gets me. He says, I don't have a geology degree, but he had 1,000 other degrees. And he said, I don't understand. See, you'd think that these heads, these other fellows at the table, we did it on purpose, start listening, And he said, are you gentlemen? He says, you're here at the meeting. Are you gentlemen by any chance geologists? And one fellow, yes, I am. And the other, yeah. He said, well, why don't you tell me? He said, why is oil? And he went on like that. We brought the house down because nobody could argue with Kantrowitz. He like Einstein. People aren't going to, and he told him right there, he said, just drop it. But it's in all the books and in all the papers. But it started from that strange meeting in 1892, a scientific convention. I have a big, thick scientific encyclopedia put out by the Van Oosteren Company that's about 15 years old now, but it has the whole story of the conference. It doesn't have the Rockefeller part, but it has the whole story of how they straightened out organic chemicals and how it was all figured, and they've got petroleum right in there.
Amazing. So
these aren't accidental things, you see. There's a dollar sign behind almost everything.
There's a dollar sign almost behind everything. Great quote. What an interview. I wish I knew who this guy was. Dropping knowledge of that meeting in 1892. It's crazy what they do to create the illusion of scarcity.
What would happen to the world if the Yellowstone volcano erupted? Most people don't know that there is a supervolcano beneath this lake, which is in Yellowstone Park, which is located in Wyoming, which is in the U.S. The Yellowstone volcano is absolutely massive, as it's 37 miles long, 18 miles wide, and 4 miles deep. It has experienced 3 major volcanic eruptions. First eruption was 2.1 million years ago, the second eruption was 1.3 million years ago, and the recent eruption was 631,000 years ago. So if it were to erupt, the surrounding states of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming that are closest to Yellowstone would be affected by pyroclastic flows, while other places in the United States would be impacted by falling ash. The amount of ash would decrease with distance from the eruption site, and due to the smoke emitted into the atmosphere, a lot of sunlight would end up reflecting back into space. This means that the entire Earth would cool by at least 10 degrees for at least 10 years. which would hypothetically help global warming.
Hypothetically, that sounds crazy. Praying I don't see that in my lifetime. I didn't know that volcano was that big. 36 miles, 18 miles wide, 4 miles deep.
Algorithms run your life. You're watching this video because of one. AI is just an algorithm that builds itself, and even their developers don't know how they work. An algorithm is a set of instructions that a computer program like an app follows. If this, then that, combined on multiple nested layers to achieve some result. But some problems are too complicated for humans to code with simple if-then logic. That's when we turn to AI, which has actually been around for quite a while, popularized in recent years through a specific type of AI called generative artificial intelligence. But how does it know what to say? Is AI some virtual sentient being living inside your phone? Not quite. It actually learns by trial and erroring millions of different algorithms over and over until one produces the best result. Imagine trying to shoot a basketball with your eyes closed. You shoot, miss, then you move a foot to the left, shoot, and you miss again. Then you add more power to your next shot, and so on. Once you hear the basketball hitting the rim, you know you're close and start fine-tuning your adjustments with every shot until you hear that swish. If you were a machine, next time you shoot the ball, you know exactly what settings you would need to get the ball in every time. That's AI in a nutshell. Keep doing something over and over until you get it right, then just remember the right way to do it. For example, how would you teach an AI to recognize what's in an image? Say you have two photos, one of a table and another of the universe. You want to develop a program that tells you which image is a table and which is a universe. There's no simple way to program the algorithm with classic if-then logic to be able to differentiate all photos of tables and universes that exist, at least not with human logic. As humans, we kind of just intuitively know that this is a table and this is a universe. We can list out distinct features of each, but even then there will be endless human intuition nuances that aren't so easy to put into words. So we program human intuition with AI by building two simpler programs first. A builder program that endlessly creates new programs and a teacher program that tests them. The builder program starts by building a set, say 1,000 of programs with borderline randomly coded if-then logic, their algorithms. The teacher program is then given a set of table photos and a set of universe photos and is told which is which. The teacher then tests each of the 1,000 programs made by the builder using the set of photos it was given to see which of the 1,000 programs get the most correct. After testing, the builder then throws the programs that score the lowest into the trash, takes the highest scoring ones and uses them to build new programs with slight changes in their algorithm's logic. The new programs are now slightly smarter than the old set. They're tested again and the process repeats. Trial and error, the foundation of AI, who would have known? This goes on and on as long as needed until we have programs that are consistently scoring high in their tests and the AI has learned. But the testing never actually stops. AI just keeps getting better and better the more people use it and give it feedback data, which is a scary thought for some, seeing as we don't actually know what makes an AI program's logic work from a human standpoint. If we look under the hood of the winning program's algorithm, it's kind of a mess of unexplainable code that just works. All humans can do is keep adding photos to the teacher program's tests to make the results more and more accurate. And of course, this doesn't just apply to photos, but to written responses, video, audio, and everything else your favorite AI does. Even this video you're watching is the result of an algorithm determining it's a video that will keep you watching the longest. Which, if you're watching this, it must have done its job right, and you've contributed to AI getting smarter and one step closer to destroying all of humanity. Just kidding, hopefully.
And that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed tonight's rabbit hole. If you haven't already, please take a sec
just to smash that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell,
just to make sure the algorithm knows what's up. So what we gonna do, y'all? That's right. Run these numbers up. Thanks again. Until next time.